A major Hollywood film was moving forward like normal, until suddenly, everything fell apart. One casting choice, one viral backlash, and within hours an actress walked away from a high-profile A24 project. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. Because the moment she quit, over 100 Latino actors and creatives fired back at Hollywood with a message that hit like a warning shot. Names you absolutely recognize stepped in, accusing the industry of quietly erasing Latino stories while still profiting from them. And what started as a single casting controversy quickly exposed something much bigger, a system that many say has been broken for years. The question now isn't just who got cast, it's how this keeps happening, and why it took a public meltdown for Hollywood to finally be called out. The controversy began with a quiet casting announcement for A24's upcoming romantic drama Deep Cuts. On paper it looked like another prestige project. Indie credibility, a respected director, and awards buzz already swirling. But fans of the book immediately noticed something that didn't sit right. One of the film's central characters, Zoe Gutierrez, is written as a Latino with a very specific cultural background. Her name, her family identity, and her lived experiences aren't just details, they're part of who the character is. So when the role was announced, online readers did a double take. The actress cast to play Zoe wasn't Latina. And within hours, fans started asking the same question over and over again: how does a character with such a clearly defined identity end up being recast as something else entirely? At first, the backlash was subtle. Then it picked up speed. Comments turned into threads. Threads turned into full-on debates. And before the studio could respond, the conversation had already escaped the film itself, and landed squarely on Hollywood's long history with casting decisions like this. But the real storm was just getting started. What started as a few confused reactions quickly turned into something much louder. Fans of the book began posting side-by-side comparisons, pulling quotes from the novel, and pointing out just how intentional the character's Latina identity really was. And once those posts gained traction, the backlash moved fast. Social media timelines filled with accusations of whitewashing and cultural erasure. Some users questioned how many Latina actresses were even considered for the role, while others went straight to the source, tagging the studio, the casting team, and the film's producers directly. The conversation wasn't just emotional anymore. It was pointed. And this wasn't coming from random accounts. Writers, critics, and Latino creatives started weighing in too, saying this was just another example of how Latino stories get filtered through non-Latino lenses. The pressure shifted from the actress herself to the system behind the decision. By then, the controversy had outgrown the movie. It became a symbol, one casting choice representing years of missed opportunities and ignored talent. And as the criticism kept building, it became clear that someone was going to have to respond. And that's when everything took an unexpected turn. Just as the backlash reached its peak, Odessa A'zion broke her silence, and what she said caught a lot of people off guard. Instead of defending the role or going quiet, she announced she was stepping away from the film entirely. In a raw message shared online, Odessa explained that she had originally auditioned for a completely different character. According to her, she was later offered the role of Zoe and accepted it without fully understanding how deeply tied the character's identity was to the story. Once she realized what fans were pointing out, her tone shifted fast. She didn't brush off the criticism. She didn't blame the audience. Instead, she apologized, admitted she should have looked closer, and made it clear she didn't want to be part of something that felt wrong. Her message was emotional, frustrated, and unapologetically final. Walking away from a major A24 project isn't a small move, especially for a rising actress. And while some praised her decision, others started asking a bigger question. If she was willing to leave, how did this casting happen in the first place? And that question would spark an even louder response. Less than a day after Odessa stepped away, the conversation exploded beyond social media. More than 100 Latino actors, writers, and creatives came together and released an open letter aimed directly at Hollywood's power structure. And the tone was impossible to ignore. This wasn't a casual statement or a PR-friendly response. It was urgent. It called out casting directors, studio executives, producers, and decision-makers by role, making it clear that this problem didn't start with one movie or one actress. The letter argued that Hollywood controls how culture is seen and understood, and with that control comes real responsibility. The stories chosen, the voices elevated, and the people allowed into the room all shape who gets to be visible on screen, and who gets erased. Big names signed on. John Leguizamo, Eva Longoria, Jessica Alba, along with dozens of other well-known faces and industry veterans. And suddenly this wasn't just an online controversy anymore, it was a public challenge to the system itself. But the most powerful part of the letter wasn't the names attached to it. It was the question they left hanging in the air. What made the letter impossible to dismiss was how specific it was. This wasn't just a call for better representation, or vague promises of inclusion. The demands went straight to the foundation of how Hollywood operates. Latino actors want to be auditioned, not just for background roles or stereotypes, but for complex leads that aren't defined by cliches. They're asking for real opportunities to compete for roles that reflect the full range of their experiences, not just what studios feel comfortable selling. But it didn't stop at casting. The letter pushed for Latino voices behind the scenes too, executives, writers, consultants, and creatives involved from the very beginning of a project. Because if decisions are made without those voices in the room, the same mistakes keep happening. They also called for long-term change. Mentorships, scholarships, pipelines that actually open doors instead of pretending they exist. Systems designed to bring Latino talent into every level of the industry, not just when controversy forces the issue. The message was clear: this isn't about optics or damage control. It's about who gets to shape the stories in the first place. And that's where the conversation started getting uncomfortable. One thing the letter made crystal clear was this: Odessa A'zion wasn't the villain of the story. In fact, the writers went out of their way to acknowledge her decision to step away, even calling it an act of allyship. Because, as they pointed out, the real issue runs much deeper than any single casting choice. This was about a system that repeatedly overlooks Latino talent, even when the characters, stories, and cultures being portrayed are unmistakably Latino. According to the letter, this kind of erasure doesn't usually happen loudly. It happens quietly. In casting rooms. In development meetings. In decisions made long before the public ever hears about a project. And by the time it reaches the screen, the damage is already done. They warn that these choices don't just affect careers, they shape how entire communities are seen and understood. Who is viewed as authentic? Who is considered marketable? And who gets pushed to the margins? And once that pattern was laid out, it raised an uncomfortable realization. If this keeps happening across projects and decades, then how many stories have already been changed without anyone noticing? For some, this moment feels different. Not because a mistake was made, Hollywood has survived plenty of those, but because of how fast the response came and how unified it was. An actress walked away. A letter followed within hours. And suddenly the industry was being challenged in public, not behind closed doors. Studios have faced backlash before, and history shows a familiar pattern. Apologies get issued. Statements get polished. Then, slowly, attention fades and business continues as usual. That's why skeptics are asking whether this will lead to real change, or just another carefully managed reset. So far, the silence from the studio behind deep cuts has only fueled the uncertainty. No clear explanation. No roadmap forward. Just questions hanging in the air while the industry watches how this plays out. And that's what makes this moment so tense. Hollywood now has a choice. Treat this as a one-off controversy, or confront a system that many say has been broken for years. Because the next move won't just affect one movie. It will signal whether this was a turning point, or just another headline that fades away. What began as a single casting announcement turned into something Hollywood couldn't ignore. One actress stepping away exposed an entire system. How stories are chosen, who gets included, and who's quietly left out long before cameras start rolling. The question now isn't whether Hollywood heard the message. It's whether it actually listened. Because real change doesn't happen in statements or letters. It happens in casting rooms, writers' rooms, and the decisions made when no one's watching. For Latino creatives, this moment represents more than a controversy. It's a line in the sand. And for the industry, it's a test. So when the next project is announced, and the next role is cast, we'll find out whether this was the start of something new, or just another story that came and went without changing a thing.